Welcome back to the show. This is, of course, Surf Splendor. My name is David Scales, and today we're welcoming back our most frequent guest, Dick Metz. This is his 8th appearance. His 7th appearance was a year ago, episode number 530 of Surf Splendor. I think there's 3 of those episodes on YouTube. All the other ones are audio only, so use Spotify or Apple if you want to go check those out. But it would be impossible for me to recap his full resume here. So I encourage you, search Surf Splendor and Dick Metz, go back and listen to all those in whatever order. Actually, I think they're entertaining, whether you listen to them chronologically or not. But the most essential information that I need you to know here today is that in 1959, Dick hitchhiked from his local bar in Laguna Beach to set off on a 3-year journey around the world. There were 5 main objectives during that journey. He wanted to surf in Australia. He wanted to meet the beautiful women of Tahiti. He wanted to travel through Africa. He wanted to run with the bulls in Pamplona. And he also wanted to catch the Olympic Games in Rome. On that trip, he had a chance encounter in South Africa with a local surfer named John Whitmore. John Whitmore had a Pan Am calendar from the airline Pan Am. He had a calendar in his home, and on one of the pages of that calendar was an image of 2 surfboards leaning up against a tree. From that image alone, John had shaped a surfboard. I forget what the material was that he shaped it out of, but he covered it with just canvas, like a canvas bag cut up, covered it with canvas, and then shellacked the canvas onto the shaped surfboard. So it's this incredibly crude surfboard, but he happened to be riding that on the beach in Cape Town when Dick Metz showed up in a hitchhike ride, exited the vehicle, saw one surfer out, went out, waited for him. When John came in, Dick introduced himself, and they kind of bonded over Dick's experience with Hobie Alter in Southern California shaping surfboards. They immediately became fast friends. Over time, Dick would introduce John Whitmore to modern board building materials and techniques, and then South African surfing would forever be changed because of that meeting. And more, or kind of equally importantly, Dick Metz then returned home to Laguna Beach, and he shared all of these stories of his travels along with imagery with his high school friend, Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown used Dick's travel itinerary and his connection with John Whitmore to outline his next film project, which was The Endless Summer, which of course went on to become the most successful documentary of all time. So, fast forwarding 60 years, Dick Metz was approached by another fellow Laguna Beach native, filmmaker Richard Yelland. And Richard Yelland wanted to make a documentary about Dick Metz's travels, and that is now available for streaming. It is also the subject of today's conversation. The film is called The Birth of the Endless Summer. You can find it available on Amazon Prime, Apple Podcasts, Apple Plus, Apple for streaming, and YouTube, I think, has it now available to purchase as well. So I highly recommend it. It was just nominated for an Emmy Award. I loved the film, and it really filled in a lot of the gaps that I had with Dick Metz just from communicating with him orally. Having the visuals really helped a lot. So highly recommend, go check that out. We'll discuss a lot of it today. But real quickly before we do, I, of course, owe a debt of gratitude to my partners that make my work possible: the Surfrider Foundation, Veyer Watches, and Real Water Sports. The Surfrider Foundation was founded 41 years ago now by surfers and environmentalists because their local beaches were being contaminated, people were getting sick, and their surf spots were being altered by development of coastlines. Despite Surfrider's many successes, the ocean now in 2025 faces unprecedented threats. So we need additional investments in agencies like NOAA and the EPA. And if you've ever felt a desire to do something or get involved, now is the time. So go to surfrider.org to take specific action, and then at the bare minimum, just become a member because the ocean needs more friends. Also, Real Water Sports is our retail partner and your one-stop shop for any and all water sports needs, from surfing to foiling to kiting, anything from surfboards to board bags to leashes to coolers for the beach or your boat or whatever. Real Water Sports has it all. They ship conveniently. They have Southern hospitality style of customer service, which I love. So find it all at realwatersports.com. And then lastly, VeyerWatches.com/surfsplendor will save you 15% on your next timepiece. Insanely durable watches built for the ocean. Over 9,700 customer reviews with an average rating of 4.7 stars. They also outfit the entire North Shore Lifeguard Association, so proven durability there and functionality, and of course, supporting the noble cause of life saving on the North Shore. So we'll save you 15% at veyerwatches.com/surfsplendor. Okay, back to Dick Metz. The project that Metz has been working on for the past 20 years is the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center. It's a museum that houses the largest collection of historical surfboards on the planet. That's in addition to an immense photo archive, surf print media archive. They have every surf magazine ever printed, and much, much more. Dick Metz has a major update for SHACC, so that is where we're going to enter this conversation today. My name is, of course, David Scales for Surf Splendor, and I really hope that you enjoy my conversation with my buddy, Dick Metz, and filmmaker Richard Yelland.
Surf Splendor.
We're moving to a new building.
I heard. Where are you guys going?
It's downtown Laguna. It's be awesome. I mean, this is right almost in back of the theater, the Rivian Theater, where
prime real estate.
You could throw a rock to the ocean.
I mean, that's a full circle moment for you.
Well, it is. I come right back to my roots. So you've got to come for the grand opening. Probably will be in March or April of this coming year.
Yeah, easy. I'm glad to be there.
It's a spectacular building. It's the old, well, it used to be a Sprouse Ritz, and when I was a kid, after that, it was a big drugs, a wholesale house on Broadway.
Yeah. Okay.
But we've got the parking lot with it, so it's not just the neat location. We've got our own parking lot.
Amazing. Congrats.
Yeah, well, it's really bitchin'. I can't wait to get it open. I was with Paul Naday for breakfast, and it's really, we're in escrow, but it hadn't closed. So we got a whole new board, David. That they're all Laguna guys, because Laguna requires to have a majority of the board for a 501(c)(3) Laguna residents. So Paul Naday, Mark Christie, Greg McGillery, Jeff Alter, Hobie's son, they're all on the board. It's really bitching. I got everybody to resign from the old board, including me, and that set it off. So now we got a young, energetic, dynamic board.
Amazing. It's a whole new chapter for SHACC.
Jeff Alter seems to have good energy, obviously with his family history and coming from Laguna as a shaper too, Hobie. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
How big is that new space?
Well, it's 2-story, and part of it's 2-story, 10,000 feet on the ground floor, roughly, and about 2,200 upstairs for office, library, all the stuff that we've done before at SHACC.
Amazing. Sounds like the perfect solution.
Well, and it's got huge, big beams and stuff. It's really open, and it feels big because it's a big ceiling and it's all open. So
more on display.
Yeah.
To see all.
We have about 180 boards on display now. We'll have more than 450.
Wow. Okay. Perfect.
So it'll be
just in time for the Olympics.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
With the Olympics being at the Trestle, we'll be the closest in big building that's involved with surfing to it, I think.
Let's start with, I know you guys have screenings and public appearances that you're doing in the coming weeks. Can you just lay those out for me now rather than at the end of the show?
Sure. Tomorrow night is the LA Area Emmy Awards. It's the 77th annual LA Area Emmy Awards. So we're up for an Emmy Award in independent programming. And that category is basically for films that are independently produced and then put on networks like PBS. So PBS submitted us, and that's the only category for films like us because they weren't a co-producer on the film. So we've been running nationally on PBS in about 20 states. And that list continues to grow as the film gets more popular and people hear about it, because the national stations all kind of sign on for the film. And so it goes through a hub called NETA. But PBS SoCal is the premiering station. So we premiered on PBS SoCal last summer, and then they were the ones that submitted us to the LA Press Club Awards and also to the Emmys. And we won LA Press Club Award in the sports film category in June.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was really exciting. And then the Emmy nomination came in early June, and then we're heading there tomorrow night to a one of three in the category. Hopefully pick up a trophy. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, congrats for even getting nominated.
I know, right? And it's pretty cool that Dick actually flew in. We were on the wait list for another ticket for him, and that just came through. So he came in just in case.
Yeah.
So it worked out really well.
That's got to be exciting to go to the Emmys.
Yeah, it's really great. I'm looking forward to it.
We're going to be wearing suits. Dick will have his Aloha shirt on.
Perfect.
As
Yeah, I
he
would
should.
expect nothing less. Were you doing any other screenings? Was there something associated with the US Open?
Yeah, so on August 1st, a week from Friday, a week from today, actually,
Yeah.
we have a special commemorative screening. We're going to do it in honor of Mike Hinson, and that will be at Pacific City, across from the beach, the Huntington Pier, Pacific City, and they call it Surf Cinema. So it'll be a free show. We've got a link to register for the tickets. Dick's going to be there. Obviously, I'll be there. We'll do a Q&A. There'll be a happy hour at Kai Restaurant beforehand from 4:30 to 6:30. That's sponsored by Pacific City and SEMA, the Surf Industry Manufacturers Association, and Vite Besai. And so we'll have a meet and greet there, and then we'll have the introduction to the film at 6:30. Then 7, we'll have the official screening, and it should be a great night. I mean, we can handle over 500 people there, so it could be our biggest screening yet.
Cool. Yeah, I'll publish this early next week to make sure people have time to make it to
That'd
that.
be great. No, we're so thankful, so glad we were able to hook this up, and glad. I've always enjoyed your work, David. You're always really well researched, and the stories are great. So,
Well, thanks. I gotta say, even though I spent a bunch of time with Dick and heard a lot of those stories,
yeah.
seeing it in film and in the visual format was actually super helpful for me.
Oh, good.
He delivers stories so quickly that I forget all of them, of course.
Yes.
And then listeners will reference something that Dick said, and I'm like, I don't even remember that because there were just so many stories. But
Yeah.
just little things like the magazines that he was inspired by. In the film, you found physical copies of those magazines, show
Yes.
visuals of them, and it's like little things like that cemented into my memory more, you know?
Good. Yeah, and also through the lens too of what it means, what his story meant, not just for the endless summer, but also that chapter of modern surfing kind of is a new chapter, and like him being pivotal in that moment when meeting Whitmore and introducing Bruce Brown to South Africa and Whitmore, working with Hobie on the first resin boards, opening the first surf shop in Hobie in Hawaii for Hobie. Those kind of moments like really solidify that modern surfing chapter. And so when you add all these things up, that was kind of the revelation in the making of the movie as well, that these little stories, especially with around his trip, really add up to something bigger.
I know you're from Laguna.
Yeah.
When did you guys first meet?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think it was when you researched the endless summer and called me or something, because we didn't know each other. I don't know how old he is, but I know I'm a lot older. So I don't think we've run into each other. Maybe at a lifeguard meeting, because I was a lifeguard probably before he was born. I don't know.
We were both Laguna Beach lifeguards, so Dick's legend in Laguna was like, oh, he was the Hobie Stores guy. So I knew Dick then through friends and family, but it wasn't really until I did my film 12 Miles North, the Nick Gabaldon story, which was set in late 1940s, that I met Dick officially, and we interviewed him at the Surfing Heritage Foundation because Dick was one of the few people that knew what was going on in Malibu in the late 1940s, early 1950s. And so that was when I dug into the archives over there and learned about, I came across some of his trip photos, and I'd probably asked a few questions along the way, like, what the heck was that picture of you sleeping in a chicken coop, you know? But also that in the back of my mind was that he had been to Cape St. Francis in the 50s, right? And so when Bruce Brown passed away in 2017, late 2017, and there was the outpouring from surfers every generation and non-surfers too. There was like you could read his obituary in the New York Times as well, that he really impacted so many people, Bruce Brown in the Endless Summer. And so I really thought, wouldn't it be a beautiful way to tribute Bruce Brown, the Endless Summer, and also kind of shed new light on the Endless Summer, was to tell the story behind the Endless Summer. But it was like a bigger idea in my head, And so I didn't really know how much of it was true. So that was when Dick and I met about the film right before I made it.
So did you know Nick Gabaldon?
Yes, I did. Not very well, because in those days there was a Black Beach in Santa Monica, and that's where Nick really hung out. But he paddled down to Malibu one day. See, I was going to school in Santa Barbara, and in those days there's no freeways to get to Santa Barbara. He went right up the Coast Highway, and it would take me 3 days to get to Santa Barbara. I'd stop at Hermosa, and Velzy was under the pier in Hermosa Beach in Manhattan. I'd surf there a couple of days or a day anyway, afternoon. Then I'd go to Malibu, and Matt Kivlin and I used to ski and party and surf together. So Matt and Joe Quigg and Dave Rockland were really close friends of mine. So I'd always stop at Malibu and then we'll surf there and hang out. So Nick showed up a couple of times. I just met him. I really didn't know him personally very well. We bullshitted and talked a while, but that was really about it. But I don't think there's anybody else alive that I'm
Yeah.
aware of that ever met Nick.
It was at the time, during that time of making that movie in 2011, 2012, I was able to talk to Ricky Grigg. And I did talk to Matt Kivlin on the phone, actually. He didn't interview for this, but and Joe Quigg I missed, but Ricky Grigg was a key piece, and Peter Cole. So Ricky Grigg was a real fan of Nick Gabaldon's, because Nick was a writer, a poetry writer. He was a student at Santa Monica City College. And Ricky Grigg just loved Nick Gabaldon and was there when he passed away, when he crashed into the pier 1951. And he and Buzzy Trent like frantically searched in the whitewash for hours looking for him. And it wasn't until a few days later, Mickey Munoz and a number of surfers at Malibu found his body floating off the Malibu pier. And that was the tragic end, you know, but his story thankfully lives on 12 miles north. And that was the seeing the National Historic Site at this beach called the Inkwell Beach, the Nick Gabaldon Day that came after, and sort of the new generation of Black filmmakers and Black surfers who look to the Nick Gabaldon story for their inspiration. It was really motivation for me to think, well, we really need to pay tribute to this chapter in history, Dick's story, as the groundwork for the Endless Summer and also this modern sport of surfing. So here we are.
Is that film available anywhere for people to stream?
It is, yes. So on curtisbirch.com, there'll be a 12 miles north link there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And has anybody talked to you about optioning or making a narrative feature film about that story?
Yes. So a number of people, and actually a producer for Sean Penn too, reached out, and we've been talking to a number of people about a feature narrative version of that. And because it's from the start, it was the one documentary I did where it seemed like it had these scenes, right? These epic scenes built into the story that were so vivid, right, in your mind, like you can imagine a beautiful period piece. Right. And Nick Gabaldon pursued his dream, crossing racial boundaries, right, to surf, and then was accepted, and he thrived among these modern pioneers of the sport, those who went on to become North Shore pioneers, big wave pioneers, and big wave surfing legends, Peter Cole and Ricky Grigg and Buzzy Trent. So it's an amazing, yeah, cast of characters, almost too good to be scripted, right?
Well, they were all characters, good guys. So deep down, they were good guys.
Good. That's good to hear. I feel like Dick Metz' story too, even, I mean, making the documentary about it, I don't even know how you could fit it all into a documentary. It feels
Yeah.
perfect for an episodic series
Yes.
on a streaming service. Has there been any conversations about that?
No, not really. I mean, I know Dick's kind of you've entertained those conversations at the Pioneer, right?
Yeah, I've done that several times.
But yeah, I mean, I think that the first step was just getting the story into documentary, and now you
Yeah.
can sort of think about, now that it's in an 83-minute format, you can kind of think about other iterations for sure. But actually, it's been such an epic journey from when we launched this film at film festivals November 21. Coming out of the pandemic, it was slow to get people out to see it. So we had like a 2-year festival run, and then we were able to string together some sellouts, and like you actually broke the Barbie box office record in Ketchum,
Yeah, that's
the
right.
screenings in Ketchum. But yeah,
We showed
That's
it in
incredible.
yes,
Ketchum, filled the theater for 5 or 6 days.
Amazing. I love to
yeah,
hear that.
I know, right? And so that we were like, okay, there's something here. We should really, because the documentary industry and the kind of distribution channels were collapsing on themselves at that time too. So it was like, let's just hold on and do some screenings. So we toured the film here around the States, and we did some screenings too in Australia. With Rob Machado toured with the film actually in Australia, and so that got us to last summer, and then we went with PBS for the broadcast premiere. So it's been a year of broadcast premiere, and then kind of teeing up this whole global release now of the documentary. So it'd be nice to really get it out there and get it out to everyone, because now people are getting impatient. They're like, okay, we've been reading about this for so many years now.
We
Yeah.
want to see it.
We want to see it. So
I'm curious, Dick, has anything good come to you from this being out in the public? Have you reconnected with friends or new opportunities or anything like that?
Well, it was great to go back to South Africa. I've been there 12 times now. So that in itself was great, because John Whitmore, of course, had passed away. I was there his last year, and his daughters, who I've known since they were born, are now grandmothers, and I stayed with them. And it was just a great experience all the way around to start some or redo those relationships of the kids that had grown up. I mean, when I was there in '58, I met Jonathan Parman and all the good surfers down there. Now they're grandfathers, and it's just amazing to see all this go on. And Derek Jardine, another one. I really enjoyed the trip and reconnecting with him. But I really didn't go away from him, because Harry Bold and Derek Jardine have been here several times, stayed with me. So those relationships that I established on the first trip, I'm a guy that keeps in touch with friends. So, we would phone each other, email, text, and then they would come and stay with me. And I've been back there several times. I took my mother there twice, took my wife there twice. So there was a lot of give and take back and forth.
Gotcha.
I would say too, that's a really cool aspect of filming this project, was getting to go to South Africa with Dick and really knowing what's at the center of the story is the relationships. So that's bigger than who was there first, or it's bigger than, I think, some of these themes that we have in the film is the deeper relationships, that like his close relationship with Whitmore created a pipeline for Bruce Brown to send his films down there, for Bruce to come down and film the Endless Summer, for John Severson to send Surfer Magazine down there, correct?
Well, and then
Hobie boards.
all that, because Don Whitmore was a used car salesman when I met him, and it changed his life, his relatives, everything about South African surfing. I came back I was there in '58 and '9, went back in '62. I was there twice before I got Bruce to go there, and he went from a little tiny wooden little house that he lived in with 3 daughters, moved to the highest house
That's
on
Whitmore.
Table Mountain,
Yeah.
on John Whitmore. And so it changed his life totally. And it's just been amazing to me. So I've enjoyed it. And just so you know, too, Miles Masterson, who was hired to drive us around and a good local surfer, writer, just finished the book called The Oom, which in South Africa means the uncle of surfing. And we're going to dedicate October 4th here at the Rivian Theater in Laguna to have a book signing. Miles will be here in person. So the relationships are continuing.
It's really cool. And Miles, too, is a great guide. And I mean, he was really pivotal in, because all his research, we literally saw everyone we needed to see in 2 weeks to tell this story. The South African story is in a way bigger than the American story for this film, in my mind, just because they see Dick as someone, if he hadn't come and met Whitmore at that time, none of this would have happened. It's clear and simple in their minds. So when we got there it was like the, Duke Kahanamoku came and they were so pleased and proud that we're telling the story, this chapter of South African surfing. And, you'll see people like Paul Nade and Sean Thompson as being people that really admire and respect what you were able to do, right? For them
Well,
as creating a global sport, right? Through
and,
these introductions and relationships.
and from those relationships, because of that, when they started to immigrate or at least come here to surf, they'd come see me at the Hobie shop, and we were the first ones to carry Gotcha and Vissla and all the companies. They started making clothes in Durban early on and knew the garment business. So when they moved to Laguna, Laguna and Cape Town looked the same. The beaches are the same. The we're on the same parallel in the southern hemisphere as we're in the northern hemisphere. So the weather's the same, and they just feel at home here like I felt at home in Cape Town.
The thing that always kind of amazes me in life continually is the fate aspect of you taking that car to Cape Town, showing up on the beach on that day that John happened to be surfing.
Yeah, all
I'm
those
sure
things.
I'm sure he wasn't surfing 10 hours that day. He was surfing 90 minutes
For
and
only
you happened to get there
for
at
only
that
15
exact
minutes
spot.
because the water was so cold, right?
Yeah, and you could have gotten out of the car at any other part of Cape Town.
Yeah.
It's
Why
just
that beach?
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it goes back even further than that because the big decision in my mind was when we got to Victoria Falls on the Zambezi River, and he was driving. It was in the middle of the night, and he pokes me, wakes me up, and he said, "This is where you wanted to get out." And at that moment, if it had been the daytime, I would have gotten out.
And this was
Changed
just a
everything.
gentleman you'd picked up a ride from
Yeah,
on the side of the road.
Yeah, I got a ride from him in a Arusha Tanganyika. We rode for 2 weeks, driving across to Africa, and finally got to Victoria Falls. And if it had been in the daytime, I would have gotten out. I didn't get out in that middle of the night. And so then the other things that you mentioned, then we end up in Cape Town, and I get out at the beach, and John Whitmore is there. All these things seemed like they were ordained from the higher up, to me. It just fell in place and made it all happen. And it was exciting. And John and I became overnight like the best of friends that you could have. He came here 7 times. I went there 12. Our families integrated. It was just a togetherness.
You
right?
really think about, I'm just getting that perspective now. I put myself in John Whitmore's shoes. He's the guy that was trying to shape a surfboard from a Pan Am calendar, wrapping canvas around styrofoam. And then Dick comes up with this knowledge, and they're like making balsa boards and experimenting with resin. And what else did you guys talk?
Well, all that they didn't even know about it because
You've been surfing in Hawaii.
Sure,
Like, what's that?
And so, all of a sudden I show up and he said, "Oh my God, you got to come home with me." And so I started telling him. And then I don't know if you remember, David, but I came home from in 61, went back in 62. But before I went back, I sent him a container of Clark foam blanks, resin, fiberglass, everything. Then I flew down to show him. He didn't know how to use any of it. So I flew down and made some surfboards with him. And he was a bright guy, enthusiastic, passionate. And that drove him to quit the car business. And
he had a good design sense too,
yeah,
right?
He really did. He was a Hobie Alter kind of a guy.
He's prized. His surfboards are prized, right? You read about Paul Nade's Whitmore collection of board is very prized, right?
He made a box like Hobie did for a removable fin, different but similar mentality. So when I brought John over here the first time and he met Hobie and Bruce, he was in heaven, and they were because they learned from him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was an amazing kind of transformation of mentalities.
There was something too. I remember when we first saw it's near the end of the film when you and John are speaking to a tape player, a recorder,
right.
And like he talks about Whitmore talking about like the bond that they had between surfers at that time was like the tightest bond that you could ever imagine among people of any kind of athlete or sport. And yeah, I just think that what an amazing time to be part of surfing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was one story I heard Richard reference it, but I never heard it from Dick, and it was about Dick's near-death experience and being in a body cast that maybe was kind of the impetus for your world travel, for you wanting to kind of get out and see things?
Well, I'd been in a car wreck and broke my back, my pelvis, and all the ribs on both sides. So
So tell
I was
that
in
story. What happened with the car wreck, or how'd you end up there?
What year was that?
well, that was before, quite a ways before. It was in, well, I was 21 years old, had my birthday in that body cast.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I think it was 51 or
Hmm.
50, I can't remember. Uh, I was in a car wreck going to well, we are going to Denver. It happened in Las Vegas or outside of Las Vegas. And in those days, they treated you different. And I had this cast from right under my arms to below my knees. And I was just laid out flat for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months before I got out of the cast. And then I was in a wheelchair. I went to college in a wheelchair for a year. In those days, there was no 4 lanes, there was 2 lanes, but it was just over the sand dunes. And we were not, it was a beautiful moonlight night. We were looking out the moon. It was, nobody was drunk or drinking, but we were going about 60, 65 over these little hoop-de-doos. And a military guy from, what's the air base? Nellis Air Base in Las Vegas had gotten drunk and passed out in his car at the bottom of a dip. So we came over the top of it, and he was at the bottom, and we just hit his stationary car. But we hit it with such impact. He was in the back seat, passed out, but he had left the ignition on, and when we hit the back of the car, it started it by compression. The car went off into the desert a bit, and the guy driving our car was the only one that wasn't hurt. He turned the wheel, and we slid into it sideways. The passenger in the passenger seat went through the windshield. Everybody was hurt pretty bad except the driver because he had turned away. And he chased the car down. It got stuck in the sand dunes, and there was nobody in the driver's seat because he was still passed out drunk. So it was a terrible experience. But you're laid up in a cast for 6, 8 months in a wheelchair for a year. It gives you a lot of things to think about. So it really, of course, I'd already been surfing and been in that world for some time when that happened, but it just made me stay in it. I felt so comfortable with guys like Peanuts Larson and Hez McClellan and the Laguna guys that taught me how to surf. And then Hobie came along, and there was a lot of energy, and we just went from there. We were all of the same mindset that we didn't want to live a normal, hectic life in LA, working, 8 hours and driving back and forth. And so we had all these funny things. I know I've told you those stories on the beach of we were never going to wear a coat and tie and leather shoes. And we stuck to that. To this day, we still don't have that.
I mean, I love it. And the idea that you're going to go to the Emmys and still not wear a coat and tie is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And also, if you thought LA was hectic back then, wait till you go
right.
tomorrow.
Exactly. We made the right decision, no doubt about it.
Yeah, unquestionably. I mean, it's crazy. That story that you just told would be, one of the most impactful, important, influential stories in most people's lives. You never even mentioned that one to me. Like, and the fact that it was a jumping off point for everything else that we discussed, it still it wasn't the most important story of your life.
No, not even close. It got better as I got older, it seemed like. So it's still going. We're
Absolutely
still having fun.
Yeah.
When you mentioned these names of all these iconic surfers. I feel like in the surf world, the same names kind of get mentioned over and over. Are there any unsung heroes from your time or your stories that you feel like kind of do get glossed over or not mentioned enough?
Well, certainly in my mind, Hobie's at the top of the list. He was not only a good surfer, but he was, to me, a Thomas Edison type of a guy. I've been on with him. I spent more time with him than anybody else has. He would come stay with me in Hawaii. I'd go with him to Alaska on his boats, and we'd go to, he had made this 60-foot power catamaran that we took all up through the Northwest. Orcas Islands and all into Alaska. And every now and then something would go awry, and we'd stop at a marine hardware store in Seattle or, Yucatan or wherever we were. And Hobie would be looking for a certain little gadget, and he'd say, "Oh, this stuff is junk. I can't find it. I'm going to go home and make a better one." And he would. He'd go back. He always had a machine shop, and he'd make whatever it was, a little fitting of some kind. And he just had a knack for it. He didn't go to college. He didn't have learn any of this, but other than just a natural instinct for it. So certainly, I give Hobie the highest rating of inventiveness, creativity. The other, there was a bunch of things, but as we were just living life, and when I opened the Hobie store in Honolulu, the board shipping air freight was $10, and they just weighed it. The fin we put in a box. We wrapped the board in plastic, put it in a cardboard box, but the fin would stick out of the box. And so they would drop them off at the Hobie store in Honolulu, $10. And one day they came, and all of a sudden it was $20. And I said, "Well, what's the deal?" to the truck driver. And he said, "Well, they've cubed it." And so wherever the fin stuck up, they cubed the length of the board, and it doubled the price. I called Hobie that day and said, "They've doubled the price. I can't pay $20 for freight." I said, "You got to do something with the fin. Knock it off. I'll put it on, glass it over here, whatever." And a couple weeks later, the box come, and there's no fin sticking up. The price goes back to $10, and the fin is taped to the deck of the board, and he's got a removable box to put the fin in. He made the first removable fin with a big bolt that went through from the deck. You can probably remember polypropylene material fins, and you had a choice of colors and shape of the fin. So all of a sudden, just that freight change, I'm thinking I'll glass it on.
Yeah.
Hobie's thinking I'll make a better way, and he did. And all the time we were always trying to, around the water, wear dark glasses that stop the glare, and the polarized lens we used a lot because you could see in the water, but they scratch so easy. You just set them down, and in a week or two you couldn't see out. There's so many scratches on it. So instead of, I would just keep using them probably, but Hobie comes up with a way. I've still got a pair right here, but he laminated a polarized lens between two glass lenses that wouldn't scratch, but would give you the polarization. And all of a sudden, he made a new glass that nobody had ever seen or heard of before. So
it's fascinating.
Amazing guy that he could do that kind of stuff.
Well, also, it doesn't seem like he could have trademarked that, right? And then licensed the technology or something, or with the fin box, the same thing, but he didn't, right?
Well, Hobie, that was the thing with Hobie, and that's where I fit in, I guess. I couldn't create anything. I'm hopeless when it comes to that. But I'm kind of organized, and I like to watch where the money is and the costs and the markup and the margins and all that stuff. Hobie didn't want to talk about any of that. And whenever he would do something, fin box glasses, whatever they might be, he would get it about 98% perfect, and then he'd be bored with it. He wanted to go on to another product. And so I would grab that thing and run with it as best I could. And you spoke about licensing. I tried to license everything, but Hobie didn't want to do that. So we would make companies. I mean, we must have had 15 corporations at one time. This is before LLCs. And we didn't want, the Hobie surfboards was the king, and that was producing income. We didn't want to lose that. So we would open a new corporation for Hobie Sports, Hobie Apparel, Hobie Glasses, Hobie Catamarans. All those were separate entities because we didn't want any one of those to take down the other ones. We had a credit line in Dana Point because we were the biggest business in Dana Point. So we had a credit line of 50 grand we could get from the local bank there. Carol Elterman was the manager, and we could get 50 grand anytime we wanted. But if we had to get more than 50 for doing whatever it was, we had to go to LA. And the first time Hobie and I went to LA, and he had just been glassing a board, and he had resin all over his Levi's and his shirt and his shoes. Then we get to the UBS Bank in downtown LA, and we told the guy we wanted 100 grand. He laughed. He thought it was so funny. And we didn't get the 100 grand. So we kept doing 50s with different corporations. But that's the way it worked, you know.
Yeah.
But we did try it for once. I wanted to do all advertising with Hobie Cat, Hobie Surfboard, Hobie Sports, Hobie Apparel, but we couldn't get the different corporations to cooperate together on it. So
Gotcha.
all that was tried, but didn't work for, at least for us.
Well, part of the reason I asked Dick about unsung potential heroes is I'm curious, Richard, if you have your eyes on another project or any kind of surf stories that you feel need to be told.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, well, actually, through the work on this film, you know, there is an untold story of Mr. Pipeline and the original Mr. Pipeline in Butch Van Arsdale, and it's a little known story that he was the first Mr. Pipeline. And so for me, I thought, well, that is interesting, but what makes it relevant to today? And so, you know, the thing with Dick's story, which I loved, is that we were able to retrace his steps as a 90-year-old, which really gives us that point of view of the modern day. We were also able to talk to people like Mikey February and Rob Machado about what the endless summer meant to them, because someone like Mikey February, South African surfer who grew up not far from where Dick Metz and Whitmore used to camp in Komaki. And someone like Rob Machado, who maybe not wouldn't have become the first traveling pro magazine surfer if it weren't for the Endless Summer. And so, you know, the way that the Endless Summer and Dick's story impacted people today and how it's still impacting people today. So when I look at an untold story like Butch Van Arsdale and Mr. Pipeline, I have my eye on what's going on at Pipeline now, and I was really amazed and intrigued by what the women were doing there, and that the first women's Pipe Pro winner, Moana Jones-Wong, was like now the queen of Pipeline. So my way of telling the story to give it a modern relevance was looking at the pioneers of Pipeline, from the first pioneer to the new pioneer. And so as we're making this movie now, we're able to shed light on Butch Van Arsdale and how he inspired Jock Sutherland and how Jock Sutherland really paved the way for Jerry Lopez. And then someone like Fred Hemmings, who really wants to be part of this story because he believes that Butch Van Arsdale is truly an unsung hero in the sport of surfing. And he talks about those pioneering achievements, not just in surfing, but as humans. And when you talk to Moana Jones-Wong about what she had to do, scared to cross the parking lot to surf at Pipeline as the first woman out there, really the first woman in the lineup that's had a place in the lineup, she was scared to surf out there, and she sat on the edge of the spot for months until she finally was welcomed in by the Ho family, and like they're like, your turn, you know, and she made a place out there and became the queen of Pipeline. So really, what is that though? There's a similar mentality in a pioneer of a spot like Pipeline, or person that actually gives their life to a spot like Pipeline, that puts their life on the line to surf there. So that to me is definitely more in a way like what makes it relevant today. It's an untold piece of history, which is cherished, is important. We don't want to lose that. But also then what is it, you know, the kind of the living story arc, as I like to call it, that really inspires us, that means something to us now. And I think you're seeing too within the real core Pipeline surfing crowd and some of those guys, you know, like the Momentum generation, when you interview them about Pipeline, now they're all looking at what the women are doing too and how fast they're accelerating their performances. Now they're getting heats out there, like watching Katie Simmers progress there and Molly Picklum and Aaron Brooks and how they're surfing there. And now they're getting their time out there. It's a really interesting modern story as well as a historical story. So that's the way I look at it.
Well,
Dick, go
Butch
ahead.
was such an unusual guy. Worked for me at Hobie's. I just kind of grew up with him. I told
I
Richard
didn't
all
know
these
that.
stories. Well, he came up, you know, he grew up in La Jolla, obviously, but in those days, or in our era of the Hobie in the 60s and so forth, Butch was a young guy and came up because the Patterson brothers had come from Hawaii, had gone to Wind and Sea, and then they all came up and worked for Hobie, Ronald, Raymond, and Robert. And so Butch came up, and Butch really wasn't much of a manufacturer, and he was having too much fun. He didn't want to work much, so his piecework, he got paid for packaging the boards. So all the boards that I was getting in Hawaii, Butch would put them in the bag, put them in the box, address the box, and wrap the fit and send it over to me. So then I got him to come to Hawaii. He wanted to anyway. So he came over and worked for me. And then later on, Freddie and Paul Strow and Joey Cabell got on the Duke board, on the Duke team, where they were really on the Hobie team, most of them. But what was the guy's name? Keep forgetting that put the
That put the team together.
yeah. I'll think of it in a second. But anyway, he ordered he wanted to make Duke Hanamoko boards and sell them to Sears and Roebuck. Wanted to make them cheap, give them bigger margin. So he was all about making pop outs, and he wanted Hobie to make the boards for the team members. And Hobie wouldn't do it and have a Duke Hanamoko label on the team boards, which was the same as the pop outs in Sears. So God, I can't think of it.
He was kind of a promoter.
He's a promoter, marketing
his
guy.
idea was to give Duke a name brand and really market Duke, right? And we're gonna.
So the four team, that's where Butch really started to get some notoriety as far as being on the Duke team, and he rode around, and Duke's had a Rolls Royce then,
but Butch was surfing Pipeline, and one of his best buddies, Eddie Eichow, is down the road, Mr. Waimea, and they were both the first lifeguards on the North Shore too. So right. Butch lifeguarded Pipeline, and Eddie lifeguarded at Waimea, and they were close friends. So that's kind of a cool chapter. And when we were filming on the North Shore in January, we were able to fortunately get the last interview with Clyde Eichow, and he told that story. And actually, Dick called Clyde on the phone, and they had an amazing story. I can't wait to get it in the film. But when they're on the phone, Dick is telling the story of when Eddie and Clyde were in the store with the Eichow mom and picking up the famous red board that Hobie made for.
Tell it, Dick.
Well, what happened is, I lived in Hawaii, and I was one of the first, not the first, but I was an early haole guy that was over there surfing. And of course, having the Hobie shop was the first surf shop in Hawaii. And so all the beach guys wanted a Hobie board. They didn't have the material then. It wasn't that they didn't. Joe Kitchens made boards, certainly George Downing, but just limited amount. They didn't have the materials. So to be on the Hobie surf team was a big deal. So I had Rabbit, Kakai, and Jama, and Steamboat, and all the local beach guys were on Hobie boards. And right away, Eichows were good friends. And Papa Eichow was the manager of the Punch Bowl cemetery. The Punch Bowl is an extinct volcano crater that has been all filled in, and now that's a cemetery for military personnel.
And they're still there.
Yeah. And so Papa and Mama Eichow lived in the bowl of the Punch Bowl in a manager's home. I've been there many, many times.
For luau's.
And then Clyde and Eddie grew up in that house. And so I got them on the Hobie surf team. And we had parties in the Punch Bowl cemetery that Mama and Papa Eichow had put on that were unbelievable. So it was those early years of the early 60s. 61, 2, 3 in there that all this happened. And Papa Eichow bought an old telephone pickup truck that had the boxes on the side of it, the pickup, and then on the top, they put stuff underneath in the pickup itself. So the top of the pickup was covered as high as the roof of and because Mama Eichow was a big Hawaiian lady, she was beautiful, had a great sense of humor. They tied down an old chair, a big easy chair. They roped it all down on the roof of this old a phone truck and put Mama cow up there and drive
No
on,
way.
yeah, on the North Shore. So wherever Eddie and Clyde were surfing, Mama and Pop wanted to watch the boys surfing, right? So she's in a big moo and Papa's driving, and they're going down. The moo-moo's blowing up. It looks like a big sail on a huge schooner or something. She's yelling, her hair is blowing, and they would pull in the sunset. In those days, you could park right in front of all the breaks. And I would just crack me up. And I was their favorite because I was a Howley who was giving them the surfboards. So they'd invite me to all these. I've got pictures.
That was a breakthrough too. And talking about unsung hero, maybe this idea of having a surf team and having team riders probably came from those Hobie years, right?
Oh, it was fabulous. We had too much fun. I laughed every time.
That reminds me too, when we were interviewing Clyde, that at the end of the interview, he brought out this picture of Aikau at the last Eddie event, and he was just showing that picture with so much pride. And it was beautiful. And you kind of see that probably was passed down there, that this tradition of
family valuing
are
so important in Hawaii.
Yeah. And really cherishing the surfing culture. And that's the beautiful thing I want to get across in this pipeline film too, is that cherishing those relationships and that family value, and that's something, that spirit of the water and waterman culture. That's something that when you tell stories through the lens of what's happening now or the industry, sometimes those things get lost. But there's a beautiful book out by Lost and Found, photos of Colonel Benson from the North Shore in the early 60s. I believe it's called Ohana. And those photos are really special. And we met Becky Benson and interviewed her. Her dad is Colonel Benson, retired colonel. And he took photos, and he was the first to take photos and film of Jock Sutherland, Jerry Lopez, the iCows. They're all in the book. And their very first time they ever were photographed or filmed. And you have inscriptions in the book when we interviewed Becky of from all the legends, from Jerry, from Jock, you name it. They're signing in that book, Buttons, Bertleman, because there's the first time they had seen themselves on camera before.
Sure.
Yeah, and so it's an incredible chapter in history, that early North Shore years.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's also incredible, talking about the importance and value of family.
Yeah.
It's also incredible to hear, Dick, how many families you've been welcomed into. I mean, from the Whitmores to the iCows.
Yes.
With Jock Sutherland, all those guys were on the Hobie Surf team.
Yeah.
So that once they were on the team, we made that big red gun for Eddie, and everybody wanted, that gun. And then Brewer started working for us, making guns, and so it imploded, because of the friendships that were determined in those early years.
And those friendships and those bonds are still meaningful. So when we're meeting, Kalani Chapman and Al Chapman, right? It all connects.
Yeah.
And it's all lineage to these early stories. And there's still that core, those core values of family. And I think that's something we can celebrate in these stories and champion, right? And put those up as more aspirational.
Yeah. Dick, how old are you now?
I'll be 96 next month.
96. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, you're losing a lot of those friends now, I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of them, but in just recent years, Brewer, Clyde probably, or Hinson, maybe the most recent of them.
Walter Hoffman.
Well, yeah, they're my really age group. The only ones, and I'm older than all of them, are Rennie Yater and Grubby Clark. I mean, they're the only other two that were close, because Munoz and Phil Edwards and all those guys, they're 10 years
generation. Tell us this about your relationship with Mike, because with Mike's recent passing, Mike is such an important interview in our Birth of the Endless Summer film, because, and it was almost an interview that didn't happen. I had a great conversation with Mike on the phone the night before we went down to do the interview for Birth of the Endless Summer with Mike Hinson. It was like we got on gangbusters, and Mike was a fan of Dick's stories, and he knew of Dick's his story, Dick's legend in the industry, and his travels and his work with Hobie. Hinson was well aware, and someone like Robert August isn't as in tune with Dick's story. So we had that in common. But when I got to see Hinson when we arrived with the cameras, he's like, "Oh man, this is BS. Like, I don't want to talk about the end of the summer anymore. Get out of here,
Interesting.
get lost." And
Wow.
so I had to convince him to let us stay. And I'm like, "Look, let me just ask you a few questions, and then you can kick us out, no problem." And finally, he let us set up, and then we ended up having this great conversation about everything from Dick's travels and to Whitmore shaping boards early in South Africa to I mean, also beautiful to get Mike's own point of view on the endless summer because he has his own story, right? And he has his own feelings about Bruce Brown, and it was so great to get a different point of view on the endless summer, and also just like to your point about fate, like Mike Hinson really talked about how that day of surfing at Cape St. Francis, whoever was there first, the day they got was a fateful day because it's rare that they showed up on the day. It's a very specific southeast swell for it to be that perfect the day they were there. Is really a gift of God, as Mike Hinson put it. So, but tell us about your relationship with Hinson.
Well, I don't know what it is when I look back and you talk and mention all those guys.
Yeah.
I was what I would say I was a good surfer, but certainly not a great surfer. So I wasn't competing with them, but because of my uh, abilities with the Hobie store, my stature and that, whatever it was, but I would get them on the best guys on the Hobie surf team.
Yeah.
So we had a Hawaii team, we had a California team, we had an East Coast team. That reminds me of Murf The Surf. I got to tell you that story sometime.
Do it today.
That's a good one. But Mike and I got along with all those guys. I don't think when you talk to Phil, and I mean, all of them have their little egos and the way they got along and didn't get along with certain people. But I talked to Phil the other day. He's walking around the block. Munoz and I have been close since the day he got here. I don't know. I just seem to get along with all of those guys, and I was the luck of the draw just happened to be at all the right places at the right time. And living in Hawaii early, I went there before anybody, well, not anybody else, but I was there because I was old. I got out of the Korean War sooner. So I had the GI Bill. I went to graduate school, the University of Hawaii, and I really didn't go to school to go to school. I just went, I got $26 a week from the government. And it was because the girls were there and the surf was there. That's the only reason I went. I never learned anything. But I just lived with all these guys and we all got along. I laughing. We have a good sense of humor. And so Mike was a more difficult in the sense that he was pretty high strung. And as a result, some guys wouldn't get close to him, but he came over. He was worked for Hobie. He was on the Hobie surf team for a while. So they'd all phone me, "Hey, I'm coming to Hawaii. I don't have a car. I don't have a place to stay." So I'd pick him up at the airport, let him sleep on my couch. So Henson, along with Mike Doyle, and you just go through the whole list. Hobie told me one day, he said, Phil got mad at Hobie and quit. And Hobie said, Dick, he said, Phil's going to always be a problem. You and I are going to have to take care of him the rest of our lives just because Phil was so high strung about and his manner. Some guys would like him and others wouldn't temporarily, but I got along great with all of them. And Henson was especially good because was really close with Bruce. Bruce and I were always really close, and because of the movie, I tried to get him to go there and pursued that in the early '60s, even probably before I knew Mike. And so, because of my relationship with Bruce, Mike was a little hesitant, I think, to get close to me at first, but I'm kind of neutral, and so.
Yeah.
Mike and I got along great. He stayed at my house a million times, pick him up, take him to the airport. That was all just part of the surf culture that I lived in.
Jake Howard at Surfer's point of view on Mike and Dick getting along is that they're both pirates.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, since you mentioned seeing Phil Edwards the other night walking, I have another friend in that neighborhood who says he sees him walking all the time and chats with him sometimes. Do you have any insights into his departure from surfing? Like, I've never heard why he doesn't want to talk about surfing or doesn't engage with it anymore?
Well, Phil has always been difficult in that way. You know, he was considered the best surfer in the world when he was younger and got all those accolades and cover of Sports Illustrated. And, you know, was the first one to really get a lot of attention media wise. And I don't know, when as he grew, he just resented people wanting his autograph and all that stuff. He liked it in one sense, but he just hated it in another sense. And so he just kind of, has left the scene. I mean, Phil will call me, I'll call him 10 to 1 times that he calls me.
Okay.
But it's just my nature. I call Munoz and all the other guys. I don't want to lose those relationships. They're important to me. And I think part of it, David, is I didn't have any kids. And so to me, the guys that I grew up with were like my brothers and sisters. And when I first, my folks were divorced. I was raised by my mom. And so when I started traveling, my mom insisted that I check in every Sunday, that she knew that I was okay. So I got in the habit of making these Sunday phone calls to my mom and to my dad. And when they both passed away at a later age, I was lonely on Sunday because I didn't have my folks to talk to. So I started calling Hobie or Mickey or whoever it was. So Sunday has been all my life a day that I make phone calls. On my immediate list for this Sunday will be Dan Bell. I can just name them. I have a list that I kind of.
Who else will you talk to on Sunday?
Oh shit. Well, a couple of girlfriends if I can.
Hopefully we'll be telling them there's an Emmy award too, and we'll be sharing pictures of that.
Yeah.
But that reminds me too why Dick doesn't like it when I text and would rather I call, and I'll probably call more now rather than text. But I will also note this. I do believe that Dick has put energy into this film too, and he continues to show up, like coming out here for this screening on August 1st. Like, treating this film like a child is like how you have to handle films these days to keep them alive,
Yeah, of course.
Like you're blowing wind on this fire continually, and Dick's 100% all in whatever he does. That's why he's still succeeding to this day, is that energy and focus and attention and care, that's what
I think that is important. I get jazzed about things, and I want you to be successful. I want David to be successful. So I want to do what I can to help that, because in the core, I believe that surfing is an unusual sport. The people that have been in it and continue to grow in it are unusual, and I want to preserve that. And so I think every one of these relationships to me is important. I want to make a friend out of those people, and I want them to be involved in surfing heritage as it goes down the road in perpetuity. I want them to look on that as a place that they feel comfortable at and leaving their legacy there.
I personally want to come out and experience your extended friend group in Ketchum.
Yes, me too.
The fact, I mean, I would love to see you in your element
in the
there
Pioneer.
Because, yeah, well, the fact that you sold out the theater, for more runs than Barbie, it is proof of it. But then also Kevin Miller told me that you buy drinks for everybody at the Pioneer every Friday afternoon. Is that true?
We're going to fill a plane and bring them out. Yeah.
No, what I do, the Pioneer is a classic bar, and it's in a museum itself. And I hope you can see it, David. So Duffy Whitmore, the owner, of course, is a good pal. And all over the walls, he's got history of Idaho animals and pictures of the biggest fish in the river and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel really comfortable and at home there. And so Friday is a big gathering point there, but the party, and I don't buy on Friday everybody free drinks, but I do what I call, it's really my birthday, but I don't like to talk about my birthday, and I've been lying about my age until he came out with the movie. It screwed me up.
Now it's like recorded. Yeah.
So,
we can't change that title card. At the end of the movie, it says you're 91.
Well, yeah, that was it.
You're still 91 as far as I'm concerned.
I was going with a girl that was, I don't know, late 50s. And we had been living together and getting along great. And she sees the movie. I told her that I was 71. I take 20 years off. And when the movie came out, it said I was 91. And I mean, she couldn't believe it. She just said, "I'm sorry, Dick. I really care about you, but I can't go out with a 91-year-old." And that kind of ended that relationship. But I still lie about it, but it doesn't do much good anymore because too many people know the real truth. But so at the Pioneer, just so you know what it is, I call it the end of summer party.
Oh,
So we have, and it's the biggest parade in the country that's totally horse drawn. There's no motor vehicles in it. So Saturday of Labor Day weekend is this big parade, and it has these big ore wagons that brought silver ore out of the mountains, 20 mule teams that come down out of the mountains, and they have the same ore wagons. 20 mules come around the corner right in front of the Pioneer, and it's a cobblestone street, and the mules a lot of times will fall down, and they're all chained together. So here's thousands of people and the mule skinners, and we're trying to get the one mule up that fell down. Not easy to lift a mule up when he's chained with 19 other ones. So it's a big weekend. That's on Saturday. Sunday is a car auction and car show. And Monday, Labor Day, is the end of summer party at the Pioneer. And I do buy all the drinks. It's free. And Duffy sends me a giant bill that I have to pay over a couple of months. But that's the free drink.
So is that Labor Day?
That's Labor Day,
Yeah.
actually the Labor Day. So it's
Gotcha.
2 in the afternoon. I'm inviting you now if you ever can come. Actually, several people said, well, Corky came last year, Corky Carroll, and he's coming again this year. He said he had too much fun. So he's coming. I had a picture of Corky and I together in front of the Pioneer they took last year. So he'll be there. Bing Copeland lives in close by, so he always comes. So there's 3 guys, me, Corky, and Bing that you know. So you're going to know the whole crowd in no time.
Dick, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to remind you at some point, David, I know you got to end this, but you need to call me about the Murf the Surf story.
Actually, I have time now. Can you tell it? Can you tell it on air?
Well, I can't.
Yeah, go for it.
Well,
Yeah.
you know about Jack Murphy was his name from, and so there again, I had Hobie stores in Florida early on. So when I came back from the Africa trip, and I opened the store in Honolulu, then I opened one in Lahaina, and Hobie called me one day from Miami, and he had gone down there for some reason to see somebody. He said, "Hey, Dick, you got to come down here. Fly down tomorrow." He said, "The water's warm and there's waves all along here, just like Waikiki." And so I came down, I don't know, a week or so later, met Hobie, and I opened a store in Jacksonville, Daytona, and Miami, Hobie Surf Shops. And, you know, I was kind of new at this store business, and I soon learned that being in Florida, California, and Hawaii, I couldn't cover all the stores, and there's too much monkey business going on. And so I learned that real quickly, that I ended up selling the stores in Florida because I couldn't be there. And so that in itself was another story. But when I opened the store in Daytona, we wanted a Hobie surf team on the East Coast. And so I, started watching all the guys and going to the beach and surfing myself. And Dick Cattree was one of them that I met. And so we got him on the Hobie team. And his good friend was Jack Murphy. And so I watched him surf, and he was pretty good. So I gave him a board and got him on the Hobie surf team. And we became friends. And the next thing I know, I forget how long it was, but Murphy and a couple of his buddies drove to New York in a yellow Cadillac convertible, which there's no car that would be more obvious than a yellow Cadillac convertible in that period. They go to the Metropolitan Art Museum, climb up the fire escape, and Murphy gets on a rope. I mean, this is like one of those movies that are unbelievable. He comes in out through a window that wasn't apparently taped with tape of letting off the bells go. So he came through the window, didn't touch the floor because they had some kind of a system on the floor in the building. he stole the Star of India and a whole handful of diamonds. Now, this was a well-known story that happened at the time, and it was in all the media. And, he went right back to Florida in the yellow convertible. The FBI was right behind him. And so he got back in Florida and went diving in a special place that he knew and put the Star of India and a handful of diamonds in about 20 feet of water and buried them. And so when the FBI arrested him, over a period of questioning time, he finally decided to give back the Star of India. And so he did that, and one or two of the other diamonds. The other diamonds seem to have disappeared. I don't know quite where the other diamonds went. But anyway, so he went to prison, but because he returned the Star of India, he got out on probation in a couple of years. And so when he got out, he went back to Florida, and he was kind of a local hero. And he was on a boat party somewhere in Miami, and a big wild party apparently, and some gal was killed some way. Nobody seems to know, but he was on probation. Because he was on probation, they rearrested him, and he had to go back and serve the rest of the term, which is another 19 years. So in that early period when he first got out and he was on probation, we Hobies, because he was a Hobie team rider, we made a new surfboard for him. He'd been in jail for 2 years. We knew he wanted to surf, so we made a new Hobie board. And before it was glassed, Bobby Patterson, all the guys that worked on the board signed it under the glass, not on top of the glass, where it would not last too long. So that board, when he got arrested the second time and went back to serve the remaining 19 years, disappeared. And he had it in Florida, and who had it and where it went. And I started tracking it down because I knew all about the board, and I wanted it in the museum. And so I kept putting feelers out and people I knew in Florida and watching. This went on for years and years. So finally, I got a phone call, and the board showed up in a surf shop in Florida, and I bought it from the surf shop owner, and I have it in the museum. And so here it is, made this full round trip. And so when Murf gets out, finally, he told the prison, Murf is a special guy, and I'm not saying what he had in mind, but he told him that he had religion and that he was going to want to preach in all the other prisons about being a good guy and being an honest person, and he wanted to give that back to prisoners. So they let him, and I'm in Ketchum, Idaho at the Pioneer. I get a call from the state prison in Twin Falls, and they said, there's a guy named Murf The Surf here that wants to talk to you. And so I went down to Twin Falls. He was on this religious kick and was giving a speech in the state prison in Idaho. So I met him down there and had a big laugh over that and had a couple of cocktails. And it was great to see him. In the meantime, I get the board back in the museum, and then I get a call from, I don't know if you ever heard of the program, Mysteries of the Museums. And it was a TV program that was on for quite a while. And so I got a call from this company that, like Richard, it's producers that made Mysteries of Museums. They came to the museum in San Clemente and interviewed me about Murf the Surf and filmed all this about a mystery of the museum, because I had the board they tried to do it in the Star of India stealing. And so it made a great museum thing. And to this day, I get texts. It's like the picture that, of course, Richard made, but this one, it goes back even further. Guys call me and say, I just saw you on Mysteries of Museum. And they're still showing the thing about Murf the Surf and the heist of the Star of India.
The board is still on display right when you get out of the restrooms there. Yeah.
Dude, do you think that his religious thing was sincere?
Well, I mean, he convinced the prison people it was. I mean, I do think he started buying into his own speeches, I think. he convinced himself, if nobody else. But he was quite a character and quite a guy. And he was a good surfer. He was just, it's so many guys get sucked into stuff. They want to have fun. They want to do something different. And he was one of those, but he was a character.
You
for
never
sure.
told us what Butch Van Arsdale put in the boxes.
Well, that's another story. Yeah, I could talk all me.
Save it for the film. I will say there's like a professional journalist who did a podcast series on Murf The Surf. And
they did.
yeah, I'll look it up and I'll send it to you. I forget who it was or what the news company was, but he wasn't a surfer. The journalist himself wasn't a surfer. And I ended up speaking to him at some point about he just wanted to be interviewed basically on Surf Splendor to advertise his series that he was doing. But it was before Jack died. And so he was doing interviews with him, and he was really trying to pin down the story about the woman being shot on the boat. And that was going to be kind of the big final reveal at the final episode, was trying to get Jack to kind of either admit to it or something. And the journalist had collected enough circumstantial evidence that all fingers were pointing to Jack, essentially. And he never got a confession out of Jack, but they left it open-ended at the final episode, just kind of letting Jack know, like, hey, man, you were the only guy there. Here's where the evidence is pointing. Like, what do you have to say for yourself? And Jack never would confirm nor deny, basically. Or I think he specifically did deny, but it was pretty big indictment, basically.
Well, the surfboard made the whole trip of that story that you're talking about. And other people confuse when you say Murf the Surf of the cartoon character in the Surfer magazine with Jack Murphy in Florida, because the names are the same. But anyway, the board is a crown jewel of the museum, so it has a historic story to tell.
Absolutely. And they made a Hollywood film.
We'll plug this screening August 1st.
There you go.
At the U.S. Open of Surfing, yeah.
In kind of wrap-up mode or closing, where can people see the film?
Sure. Well, what they should do is check out Birth of the Endless Summer on Instagram. So it's at Birth of the Endless Summer on Instagram. And we are available on Apple TV, Amazon, Google Play, Vimeo On Demand, a list of major platforms. But on Instagram, you can click our links there for your favorite platform. You can also keep up to date on the Instagram at Birth of the Endless Summer. You can look out for PBS broadcasts in your area. So we just had this month, we had West Virginia, Kansas, like wherever you are, they're playing. And so you just keep an eye on Birth of the Endless Summer Instagram for that. You can check your local listings for PBS. And so, yeah, lots of opportunities now for people to watch the film, which is great.
Absolutely, yeah. I saw a friend who shapes surfboards up in New Jersey. He posted an Instagram of him watching it as well. They had it playing in the shop. So I'm starting to see it kind of pop up more and more.
That's great news. I think that it took us a while for people to understand that it's out there, what it is. I think when we talk about the Endless Summer, it just throws such a big shadow because it's so ubiquitous that like it's hard to explain. Like, no, this is a story about Dick Metz. It was an inspiration. It's a story behind the Endless Summer. So I think that is really cool now to finally see. I think that turning around where people understand, hey, there's a new film. It's a new documentary.
Yeah.
It's the Birth of the Endless Summer. It's the prequel. And yeah, and it's a story. It's really, I think Dick's story is a remarkable travel story unto itself. And I think that, a year after talk about ubiquitous on the road, Jack Kerouac was published the year before Dick went on his trip. So, I mean, we're talking about one of the great travel stories of all time, Dick Metz's story. And I think that the fact that it might have inspired Bruce Brown, it did inspire him. It got him to South Africa because of the Whitmore connection. Dick had been to Cape St. Francis, the iconic surf spot now called Bruce's Beauty. Dick had been there 4 years before. So all these things are just an amazing a stop on the way on a great 3-year tour, Vagabond Adventure. So
yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks again, you guys, for getting together to do this.
David, it's always good to talk to you, and I'll look for you at Ketchum, Idaho at the Pioneer this year next.
I'm going to look up flights right now.
Thank you for this, taking the time out. Really glad to reach your your audience, and thank you for your attention to these stories, and we really appreciate it, because without these kind of channels, like, we just wouldn't get the kind of, we wouldn't make the impact, right? It's like it's these kind of stories aren't quick to tell, right? So we really appreciate you digging in with us and being interested and giving us a platform, because it's really so important, and that was so meaningful. The relationship we built with Kevin and Florida Surf Film Festival, such a big stepping stone for us, and so
Good.
just really appreciate your support of independent filmmaking and storytelling.
No, thrilled to. I mean, honestly, our listeners love Dick Metz, and I
Yeah,
hear it constantly.
yeah,
And so when they heard about the film being screened 2 years ago, I think they were eager to see it. And
yeah.
so now just letting them know it's out there and available, I think connects all the dots.
Yeah, and it's so great, the timing with the Emmy Awards tomorrow and the screening at the US Open next Friday, and we're able to commemorate Henson. They're going to be there's going to be a few articles out on Henson and Dick's relationship, which will be something readers can look out for. But I'm actually looking forward to that. I think Mike is an amazing guy to celebrate in terms of his board shaping, and obviously his roles in surfing and being an amazing surfer.
He was a great guy, and I really enjoy him and miss him already. And I do want to tell you, David, too, Kevin Miller comes every year to Ketchum, Idaho. I had dinner with him 2 weeks ago. We had a great time when we were down
So
doing
much
the
fun.
movie
Yeah.
at his place. Do you know Kevin?
Yeah, of
I know
course.
Kevin really well.
Well, remind him, I just had dinner and lunch with him 2 weeks ago. He brings the whole family to go up to the lakes and camp around there. So I see him every summer. So he knows the Pioneer well. I know he can tell you about it.
Yeah, awesome. I'll let him know that we just spoke to.
Yeah.
You do a great job, David. I look at all the ones I've done, and I enjoy the ones with you. You do have a knack for asking the right questions, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dick. Thrilled to be able to do it.
Thanks,
All right.
David.
See you guys.
Okay, talk.
Surf Splendor.